Yo, what is up guys, Grim here, and in today's video I want to share with you guys my plans for PoE 2, specifically what I plan to start, with a focus on ascendancies and some cool interactions. But before that, of course, the elephant in the room. It's been a while since I've posted last, and as I'm sure some of you guys know or have theorized, I'm no longer a full-time content creator, and my living is made in a far less stressful manner and in a more traditional way, which I'm very happy with. With that said, distance does make the heart grow fonder, and I've got an itch to get back into making cool content like I originally did at the very start of my journey in PoE 1. With the recent PoE 2, I figured, now's as time, as good a time as any to, get back in and see if I can get my passion back and, have a whole lot of fun once again. But time away has given me the opportunity to look at the content I made and realize, some of it really wasn't that great. With that said though, some of it I actually do think was genuinely helpful. To keep it simple, the plan is to double down on the helpful stuff and get rid of the not so great stuff. So here's pretty much what you can expect. You guys can expect frequent discovery videos, kind of akin to my usual daily league mechanic videos I've done in the past. And the very first PoE 2 video you guys can expect from me is a day 1 discoveries video. Gonna do a big 24-hour play session, and you guys are gonna learn everything I learn, and the people I'm playing with, you guys are gonna learn everything that we learn. And hopefully there's gonna be some super duper awesome useful stuff in there, and it'll give you guys the leg up if you're interested in that. We're also going to do a bit of a focus on solving, testing, and providing meaningful insights into mechanics and hopefully even build. So I want to apply the league mechanic mindset to pretty much everything we do and, make sure that it's all super useful and helpful and worth watching. And lastly, I also want to really focus on elevating community members wherever I can. I got my start on YouTube and ended up where I did through a very good friend of mine, Taki Cat. He's gone now as well, but I want to hopefully try and give that opportunity to whoever I possibly can, while also, giving recognition where recognition is due, because I think that's a really big thing in the PoE community, and I absolutely have no problems giving all of that recognition to whoever it deserves. So if you got a cool idea or you got a really cool build and you want it covered, let me know, and I'm more than happy to shout you out. Now, on the other side of things, you can expect less of a blind focus on currency per hour in my videos in general. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not going to be, optimizing mechanics, presenting really cool strategies and all sorts of stuff like that. I just don't want to go down the currency rabbit hole again. That is pretty much responsible for why I think I don't really have that much fun playing PoE 1 anymore, and why I initially left, altogether. Reducing everything to a divine per hour number really does limit the fun in the game, at least for me. I ended up only playing one build because I believed it was the best, whether that's true or not. I pretty much only farmed what I considered the best farming strategies, and I basically optimized the fun out of the game for myself. We'll still do the min-max, we'll still go really hard, but yeah, not going to be focusing purely on currency anymore. So don't ever expect to see divines per hour or chaos per hour in any of my titles pretty much ever again. So we'll still be going hard on the optimization. We'll do loot comparisons and all sorts of stuff like that, just not pure currency focus. The other two things here, the first is no more gloating. I look at the titles and I shake my head in shame. No more how I farmed Headhunter or how I farmed Mage Blood. And by the way, you can't do the strategy I did because I now posted a video and you guys can't make the money I did anymore. We're not going to do that anymore. We'll just be farming, we'll just be sharing discoveries and cool stuff. None of that. And also, we're not going to do any sensationalism or complaining, no, this is the new most broken item, no more of the, kind of like, oh, the league sucks. No more of that. We're not going to do that anymore. Only positive stuff, only cool stuff on the channel. And that about covers it. All right, so with that out of the way, let's get into the fun stuff, what I am planning on starting. So I'm sure a lot of you are expecting the Deadeye, Tornado Shot, or at the very least, a bow. Well, no, we're not going to be going for any of those. We're instead going to be going for the Blood Mage. Now, why am I choosing a Blood Mage? Well, right now, we don't have a whole lot of information. Pretty much the only thing which is reliable and that we can go off is the ascendancies themselves. A good character in PoE 1 is made up of items which have modifiers, uniques, skill gems, interactions between all of those things, and the passive tree. Now, we know basically none of those reliably. GGG is infamous for making changes right up until the last second, and I would fully expect pretty much everything, with the exception of the ascendancies, to be touched or changed in some way, shape, or form. So all the leaks, while they do give you an idea of what might be coming, I don't think that they're wholly reliable. I definitely don't want to theory craft my whole build around them. So I'm just going purely off the ascendancies. Now, with that said, I do think there's some cool things from the leaks which we can take a look at, which we'll get to afterwards, but we're mainly going to be talking about the ascendancy. So, what does the Blood Mage bring to the table? Well, first, we need to understand two big things about PoE 2 compared to PoE 1, at least for me. Now, the first of those is that PoE 2, there's no second chances, man. There's only one shot, baby. In PoE 1, you had 6 portals, the infamous 6 layers of defense. If you're doing a boss, you can just relax, because you've got 6 shots at that bad boy. If you invested a ton of money, chances are you're going to be able to kill it, you're going to be able to get the loot, because all those 6 chances, you can't mess up that many times with a good build. You're going to get it done. Same goes for maps. You get unlucky 5 times, most likely you're going to get it on the 6th. PoE 2, a 1 chance. You get unlucky once, you take 1 stray hit, you miss a dodge once, it's gone. So if you invested a ton of money in a boss key to, get your progression a bit further, maybe you're farming bosses for money. Losing that one boss is a big hit. It's going to set your progression back, or it's going to hurt your profits if you're bossing for profit. So really, really don't want to be subject to that myself. And it's the same situation for maps as well. Let's say you set up a juicy map, you put all of the investment in there, you might even have loot on the floor. Boom! Out of nowhere, a rare, just bah! Straight out of nowhere, man. Gets you. All that loot in the map is gone. The opportunity is gone. Oh, man, I can't even imagine the feeling. So I knew I had to play a tanky build. Now, what is a tanky build? Well, at least in PoE 1, you want it to have a huge HP pool, whether that's a combination of life, mana with mind over matter, energy shield, anything like that. You want to have a big buffer zone. And, I think the Blood Mage can help with that. You also want to have a big effective health pool. You want to have armor. You want max res. You want block if you can get it. You want, evasion if you ideally can get it. Maybe you can't get that. But I want to have access to as many of those things as possible. And I do think the Witch does have some pretty good options when it comes to that as well, specifically the Blood Mage. And then finally, the most important one of all, for me at least, was the ability to recover. When you take a huge hit from a boss, you want your life to come straight back as fast as possible. You don't want to be messing around with really slow regen and then take another hit and you die. You don't want to be running away, hoping for your energy shield to recharge. You don't ideally want that. You just want to be able to go poof, straight back up, man. And they're ready for the next hit, which hopefully, doesn't kill you. That's the idea. And I think that all 3 of those, Blood Mage kind of fits the bill. Now, in addition to that, the second reason, which I've got there, is that PoE 2 looks a lot more bossing focused, at least on the first playthrough. You got your campaign, that's 50 times 2, 100 bosses there, which you got to get through. But also in endgame, it does seem like there's a massive emphasis on bossing. To get all of your Atlas points to, get the maximum juice on your maps, so even if you wanted to play a mapper, you definitely want those, you have to kill 4 bosses or boss-like encounters per mechanic. So you have to do 4 simulacrums, 4 breachstones with the pinnacle boss at the end, 4, I don't know what the one for the other ones is, but 4 of each of them. And they all did seem pretty bossing focused. So that's another reason for me to go Blood Mage, because I do think this can be a bosser, and I will be playing it with the intent that it's a bosser. So we're not going to be going for movement speed, we're not going to be worrying about clear speed, we are going in with the intent to slay those bosses. We're going to get them down. I don't want to be relying on other people, hopefully, to do that. I want to do them myself, I want to get them dead, and maybe we can even help some other people out, and maybe we can make a better profit off that as well. We'll have to see. Alright, so how does the Blood Mage specifically contribute to all of those things, and, why did I pick it? Well, the most important node on the entirety of the Ascendancy, for me at least, was Vitality Siphon. So, Vitality Siphon states 10% of your spell damage leached as life. Now, if you guys didn't know, Leech in PoE 2 works a bit differently than PoE 1. Not going to go into the full details here. Dream Core has a very good video on it, so I definitely recommend going and checking that out. But it's fair to say it's a lot more powerful in PoE 2. Now the trade-off here is that in PoE2, it's far more limited. There is very, very few sources of this, and the sources we have seen so far and the devs have referred to as definitely going to be in the game are all physical attack-based leech, which isn't something that a spellcaster can have access to, and quite frankly is not something many characters can have access to. You know, it's pretty specific, and the numbers that they have shown so far of those leech amounts is definitely not as high as what we're seeing here, at least so far. You know, it could be different, who knows. So that definitely is a big one. Now, leech, you know, there is a very high chance that you can, you know, hit an enemy with a ton of DPS and just watch your life go poof, straight back up. Now, we don't know exactly if that'll be the case. There is just so many factors at play, but I'm gambling it will be the case. Now, don't get me wrong, it's a gamble. You need to have enough damage, and you have to make sure that a bunch of other things are going your way, but there is a chance that leech will be incredibly powerful in PoE2, and it will fulfill that recovery requirement I wanted, and basically allow me to take a hit and instantly shrug it off, ready for the next one, which, you know, would be incredible amounts of survivability. So that is the driving force behind the Blood Mage for me. Vitality Siphon. If leech sucks, there's a very high chance I'm heading back to the beach. But if it doesn't, you know, this might be one of the best ascendancies that I could have chosen. So that's the biggest reason I'm choosing Blood Mage. Now, there's another reason I'm choosing Blood Mage though, and that is Grasping Wounds. Now, I want to be tanky, I want to be able to take those big hits, and Grasping Wounds helps with that. 25% of all of the hits that you take towards your life will be mitigated and dealt to you over 4 seconds. That's what this passive does. It's basically the same effect as Progenesis in PoE1, one of the best items of all time. So this is without a doubt a very strong note. And the downside of it can be pretty much completely omitted by our leech if it works. So the idea would be, boom, big hit, 25% of that is burning off of you, but because you're leeching so hard, you've fully mitigated it. So, I mean, you could kind of treat it as a pseudo 25% damage reduction. It's not really, but you know, it's definitely something akin to that, which is quite appealing. Helps us with that goal as well. And then of course, we do have some damage scaling as well, which is nice, nothing crazy. I think some of the other ascendancies get some better stuff, but you know, it's definitely not bad. You know, we get to scale crit damage based on life, so I wanted to go tanky anyway, we get damage for that, fantastic. And we also have the chance to get Cement base crit if we want to go for that, but it would be at the cost of Grasping Wounds, so we probably won't go in that direction. But it's there if we want to take it and we want to use it. So that's kind of the Blood Mage ascendancy there. So we're mainly going for the leech, we're mainly going for the big hit protection, and we do have some damage. But there is unfortunately a big downside to the Blood Mage, which we have to talk about, and that is Sanguimancy. Sanguimancy is a node which every Blood Mage has to take, and I'm sure if you guys watch the reveal, you guys know exactly what it does. It basically adds an additional cost to all of your abilities, and that cost will be in life instead of mana. Basically doubles the cost of your abilities, but split between the two resources. Now, the payoff of this is that you will spawn a bunch of little life remnants whenever you kill enemies or you critically strike bosses. And these life remnants will heal you. Now, they also have a new mechanic on them called Overleech. So if you're already at full life, let's say you're at 3,000, and you pick up an orb which theoretically could heal you for 3,000, you'd be able to overfill your life to double its total value. So you'd be able to overfill it to 6,000 by picking up that orb. So it's basically double life if you can manage to pick up enough orbs while not taking any damage. Now, that sounds very strong on paper, especially because it could work very nicely with your Gore Spike and give you even more crit damage bonus potentially. But the reality is, I don't think I'm going to be picking life remnants up. I don't think I'm even going to go for them at all. I'm going to discount this as just a little bit of flavor. So this node for me is pretty much a straight downside. Now, because of that, I'm not going to be clicking this. I am basically going to go through the story without a very first ascendancy until I get to the second one, where I'll take both of them at once, because I don't want to be subject to the double costs here in the story, because, you know, I just think it's going to be crippling on the story front, because you're going to be taking damage constantly while you're trying to cast, and there's pretty much no upside, because you're not going to have a very high crit rate in the story, I don't imagine. So yeah, we're going to be taking that much later in the story when we get Vitality Siphon, but it's entirely possible. I just won't take any ascendancy until I get to endgame, when I have a good amount of life, leech available to me through damage, and also a big life total to hopefully get some, stuff going from Gore Spike. probably that's going to be what I'm going to go for. So that is the Blood Mage. That is why I'm going for it, and those are all the reasons I'm after. As a bit of a bonus, I figured I'd throw in some Leak Theory crafting here. Now, as I mentioned earlier, most of this stuff super subject to change, so don't put too much stock in it. But the very first one here is a chess piece, which grants us the overflow mechanic, but from Life Leech. Now, that means we don't have to play the life minigame and can still potentially double our life pool, but it does come with a downside of 25% reduced maximum life. Does seem very strong, you know, doubling our life, but with the downside, lose a chess piece. Not sure if it's worth it, but definitely one to keep an eye on. Next up is a candidate for a potential main skill, Eye of Winter here. It's got a big base crit chance here, which is important for Blood Mage, because I'm wanting to go crit stacking, but it also inflicts critical weakness on hit, which could be potentially very strong. Critical weakness is a debuff that you can stack up to 20 times on enemies, and every stack of it makes it so you have 0.5% base crit chance against that enemy, so it goes up to 10% there, which theoretically would make this a 22% base crit chance spell, which also carries 10% over to your other abilities as well, which would be very, very strong for the crit archetype here. Now, 20 stacks sounds like a lot, but Eye of Winter in PoE 1 hits a ton of times if you aim it just right, and I'm hoping it does work that way in PoE 2 as well. Now, on top of this, it is a projectile skill, and it also gains extra effects when it passes over elemental ground. We don't know what those effects really are yet. Hopefully it's more damage, but it definitely does have some synergies there as well. And on that note, Frost Nexus is a way we could capitalize on that chilled or elemental ground effect here. Frost Nexus makes it so that whenever you freeze with the supported skill, you gain a chilled ground effect for 4 seconds, meaning we could use another skill to apply the Frost Nexus, have our chilled ground, and then have our Eye of Winter passing over to gain a ton of additional damage. On a similar note, we could also use Flame Wall in addition to that to grant our Eye of Winter even more damage. Now, flat spell damage is incredibly rare in PoE 2. I don't even know if it exists outside of skill gems, and Flame Wall is something that actually grants it here. So that's very, very strong potentially, and it could add quite a lot of extra damage to our Eye of Winter here. So combining that with the chilled ground or other types of elemental ground, very, very high potential. Next up on the docket here is Archmage, a very, very experimental one here on the list. I'm sure a lot of you guys know what it already does, but it is a self buff, which gives you 5% of your damage as additional lightning for every 100 mana you already have. Now, I fully plan on going Mind Over Matter on my Blood Mage for the extra tankiness, so I'm already planning on building mana. So this would give me a ton of additional damage for free. Now, we've already got Eye of Winter, which is potentially passing through a Flame Wall to gain a ton of flat fire damage, and also potentially through Chilled Ground to gain even more damage if it works that way. And this, on top of all that, would just multiply all that damage we have and make it all additional lightning on top of that, which could be incredibly potent in terms of base damage juice. Now, there is a downside though, and that is that all spells cost an additional 5.35% of your mana at this gem level here. Now, what does that mean for a Blood Mage? Because we're paying some of our costs in life, we're paying some of it in mana, what's going on with this? Well, it's very hard to say, but there's quite a few shenanigans afoot here, and I don't think I have time to explain really how this could work with Blood Mage, but it's fair to say there's some people cooking, myself included, and there's potentially a way to mitigate the downsides of Archmage and not pay any mana at all with your main skill, while still getting the lightning damage. And the way you do that is through life tap. If you life tap your main skill, there's potentially a possibility that you can make it so the mana cost of Blood Mage, the cost of the skill, and all of that is just funneled into life, which hopefully you're leeching a absolute truckload of. So you're just smashing out your Archmage Eye of Winter with all the buffs on it, and you're just leeching back all of the mana costs that it would otherwise cost because it's now coming from life. That's the idea. No idea if it'll work, but it sounds pretty cool if it does. And last up here we have, of course, Cast on Critical. Cast on Critical, we're hitting a ton of times, hopefully from Eye of Winter. It could be pretty good, right? If we're critting all the time, we could maybe get some serious cock juice here, which, I personally would like to put on Comet. Cock, on Comet, Cock Comet, that could be pretty damn strong, man. Especially if we link in some, like Spaco or something like that, we could maybe get in some serious damage here. So that's pretty much all of the Leak Theory crafting I've done. Nothing too concrete here. All the stuff, most of it's probably not going to work, but that's part of the fun of a new release. Definitely very excited though. Hopefully you guys are too, and hopefully you guys enjoyed the video and, got some new perspective. And until next time, cheers.